Shalom. In this week's Torah portion of Vayera, beginning in Genesis chapter 18, Torah continues to focus on the life of Avraham Avinu, our father Abraham. As we began to learn last week, Avraham quite single-handedly changed the world. He fought boldly against a sea of idolatrous PC conformity that was steeped in denial of God, corruption, and immorality. Yet at every opportunity, he always emulated God's attribute of chesed, kindness. He was the first person in many generations who believed in God, and he didn't keep a low profile about it. He was upfront and brave, fearless, even in the face of a death sentence imposed by the wicked king Nimrod. He wasn't afraid to take a stand for his belief, and he dedicated his entire life to teaching others that there is a creator and that this life has purpose, and how important it is to perform acts of kindness. Avraham was literally a giant of faith. And from the time that Avraham came to know Hashem, God tested him throughout his life. Torah tradition, as taught in Pirkei Avot, the chapters of the fathers, tells us that Avraham was subjected to 10 trials, all of which he withstood with great success. He had to hide from Nimrod for 13 years. Nimrod sought to kill him. Nimrod threw Avraham into a fiery furnace. God commanded Avraham to leave his family and his homeland behind. And then, as soon as he arrived in the land of Canaan, a famine forced him to leave and go down to Egypt. Sarah was taken by Pharaoh in Egypt. Avraham had to go off to war to rescue his nephew Lot. And God tells him that his descendants will suffer under 4 kingdoms. God commands Avraham to circumcise himself and his son Ishmael. God commands him to banish Hagar and Ishmael. And finally, God commands Avraham to offer Isaac on the altar. The 10th and final test, known in Hebrew as Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, or simply as the Akedah, the binding, takes place towards the conclusion of our portion of Vayera. And this is the greatest of Abraham's tests, and in many ways it's the climax of his career, the career of his belief in Hashem. In chapter 22, in verse 2, we read, "And God tested Avraham, and he said to him, 'Please take your son, your only one, whom you love, Isaac, and go away to the land of Moriah, and bring him up there for a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will tell you.'" The test of the binding of Isaac is a cornerstone of Torah and a benchmark of our faith. We recite these passages of the Akedah as part of our morning prayers every day. It's considered to be an eternal merit for all of Abraham's descendants. It's something with such spiritual power that it continues to shield us to this day. In Hebrew, the concept of a test is called nisayon. This week's Torah portion of Vayera and our reading this week of the binding of Isaac gives us the opportunity to focus on the idea of the tests that we all confront throughout life. This theme of God testing us appears numerous times throughout Torah. In addition to the Akedah of our Parsha, the incident of the binding of Isaac, in Exodus chapter 16 in Parashat Bishalach, when Hashem brought the manna down from heaven for the Israelites, Torah tells us there explicitly in verse 4, "Behold, I shall rain down for you food from heaven. Let the people go out and pick each day's portion on its day, so that I can test them, whether they will follow my teaching or not." And indeed, regarding the manna and the whole experience of the wilderness journeys, in Parashat Ekev, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, we read, "You shall remember the entire road on which Hashem your God led you these 40 years in the wilderness so as to afflict you, to test you, to know what is in your heart, whether you would observe his commandments or not." And Parashat Re'eh in Deuteronomy warns us about a false prophet and states, "Do not hearken to the words of that prophet or to that dreamer of a dream. For Hashem your God is testing you to know whether you love Hashem your God with all your heart and with all your soul." And at the transcending supersensory event of the Sinai revelation, in Parshat Yitro, in chapter 20 of the book of Exodus, we learn that the entire people saw the thunder and the flames, the sound of the shofar and the smoking mountain. The people saw and trembled and stood from afar. And they said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we shall hear. Let God not speak to us, lest we die." And Moshe said to the people, "Do not fear. Liba'avor nasot etchem, for it is in order to test you that God has come." Except that in that verse, invariably, in every authentic or authoritative Jewish translation, we find it translated as, "for in order to elevate you," or "for in order to exalt you, in order to raise you up, God has come." Because nisayon, a test related to nes, a miracle, Its root, the word nes, also means a banner, a flag, something to be raised up high for all to see. This is the real purpose of every test, and this is the secret King David shares with us in Psalm 60 and verse 6. To those who fear you, you gave a banner to be raised high, for truth's sake, Selah. Nes lehitnoses in Hebrew. The test he gives those who fear him is a banner to be unfurled and raised, an opportunity for ascension, for growth. Torah is the blueprint of creation and the guide for the mission of every soul that God lovingly brings into this world. Our sages teach us that each of us is a letter in Torah, and thus, as we study Torah, we're learning the as yet unfolding story of our own lives. The story of Abraham's final test conveys a profound life lesson for all of us, and perhaps one of the deepest secrets in the whole world, so open up your heart in the deepest way. Each person in this world, each one of us, goes through 10 tests throughout our lives. And the truth is that we're always being tested. Everything is a test. But each of us confronts tests that are divinely tailor-made for each of us, according to the roots of our soul, in the areas in which we need to grow and master. But here's the thing. God only tests a person in an area that he already naturally possesses the ability to succeed. God never sets a person up for a fall or a failure. That's our doing. The tests are all in love, and it's all for our benefit, and it's that simple. A person is never given a test that he or she cannot pass. It's a test for us, but is the outcome a surprise for Hashem? As in all matters of free choice, he knows what we'll choose, but he doesn't interfere. But not only that, we can change. The choice is always clearly ours, and God is rooting for us, as he tells us in Deuteronomy 30, I have placed life and death before you, blessing and curse, and you shall choose life. Ramban, the great Nachmanides, explains how all of life's tests are for our benefit, that the purpose of a test is to help a person realize his or her own potential, to bring out, to actualize those latent strengths that we possess. A person can have a good heart, but this life is all about action. Hashem seeks to reward good deeds, not just a good heart. And so he brings us to a situation that helps us transpose from the realm of potential to the realm of action. Because until we use our inner strengths, they're unproven. We don't know what they're worth, or even if they're real, until we're tested. Until we're tested, how do we really even know who we are? Hashem's reward for a person's faith when it's only in potential is not the same reward as when that faith is expressed through actual deed, through action. So open up your heart deeper than ever. This is a very powerful truth. A person could be perceived by others as very righteous, and indeed, perhaps this person has honestly and truthfully never sinned in his life. This pious man, he lives a life of devotion to God. He's separated from others and maintaining a high standard of purity. Clearly a man who is not subservient to his baser instincts. A man of spiritual accomplishment. Or is he? How do you know? How do we know how real any of this is if he hasn't been tested? When push comes to shove, the fact is that whether or not he has really mastered his own evil inclination remains a theoretical question if he has never been in a situation that tested him. Maybe the only reason he seems so righteous is because he was never put to the test. We don't even know if he would pass. And thus we are taught that the reward for untested faith, a level that remains in the realm of potential, is not the same as his reward for faith that's expressed and manifest through action. There may be many special positive qualities concealed within a person, but they have not been activated. The challenge of a test is what reveals these qualities, what brings them to the surface and helps them take root, changing them from something that was latent, only hidden in potential. Open up your heart deeper than ever, because this is absolutely the deepest secret in the world. We always talk about avodat Hashem, serving God in this world. What does that even mean? What is true service of God? To serve him in everything we do with what we were given. The main task of a person in this world is to realize and actualize latent potential. Each person came into this world with a mission to fulfill. And through the tests we confront, we fulfill our purpose. It's passing these tests that make a person beloved to Hashem. We said earlier that Avraham Avinu was a giant of faith, and the verse in Joshua chapter 14 and verse 15 referring to the greatest of the giants is interpreted by Midrash to be an allusion to Avraham, a giant in the spiritual sense. But this was all as a result of his last and greatest test, through which He taught all the future generations of his children that the goal of a person who seeks to become complete in Hashem's eyes is to give expression to his potential, to all his strengths that waited to be proven, giving them the opportunity to blossom into full bloom. Thus man, who is called in Hebrew Adam, comes from Adamah, the earth, which brings forth the potential of the seeds into reality. It was only after the binding of Isaac that God gave his blessing to Abraham's future generations, that I shall surely bless you and greatly increase your offspring like the stars of the heavens and like the sands on the seashore, and your offspring shall inherit the gate of its enemy. And it was after the binding that God declared that all of humanity shall be blessed in the merit of Abraham and Yitzchak. And all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your offspring, because you have listened to my voice. The Torah begins with the book of Genesis because the whole of the book deals with the recurring theme of tests, the tests of our lives and how to overcome them. We're always being tested. And one person seems to us to have an easier life and another harder. Well, who knows what another person is really facing and dealing with? All our tests are from Hashem who loves us, and they're all to raise us up. For by overcoming them and succeeding, we shine forth with the true hidden strengths of our souls, and we truly serve God by achieving the level for which we were born. By learning to identify our obstacles and the hardships we face as Hashem's tests, we will be victorious and uplifted. Shalom, dear friends. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it so very much. It's only your support that enables Jerusalem Lights to continue its outreach of Torah for everyone.